Okay, good morning again. I'm Laurie McCauley, Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, otherwise known as Provost. And I'm delighted to welcome you to day 2 of Juneteenth events on our campus. I have to say, it always makes me happy to be in the Michigan League Ballroom because there's so many great things that have happened here and as far as events over the years. So I know it's going to be a great event when I have a celebration here. First, before we start, I want to make sure to express gratitude to the entire team that has been responsible for the Juneteenth Symposium this year. First, Rachel Dawson, who, and Rachel, thank you so much. You and your entire team in the Office of Multicultural Initiatives. I know there's a lot of work invested in this, so thank you for your leadership. I want to thank our moderator for today's conversation, Dr. Deborah Mitchell Covington, who I'll introduce formally in a few minutes, but thank you. Our keynote speaker, Damon Davis, who I got to meet just before the start this morning, and I think we're in for a treat today. So, also want to thank the Women of Color Task Force, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the U of M Alumni Association, and the many other speakers, volunteers, and organizers who made this event possible. Let's give another round of applause to all our speakers and volunteers. Though we mark Juneteenth as June 19, 1865, we're gathered today just 3 years after Juneteenth, the legal end of our nation's abhorrent practice of slavery became the 11th federal holiday. So think about that, how long it took for the recognition of this as a federal holiday. Our history is such that the Independence Day we celebrate commemorates an era where many human beings lived in bondage. For many, Juneteenth, a day of emancipation occurring more than 80 years after the founding of our country, is the second Independence Day, and to some, the first day that is deserving of that name. Each year, this holiday reminds us that we're a society of short memories and belated reckonings, sometimes decades in the making. We're a nation of high ideals and mighty contradictions. Take, for example, the Liberty Bell, that damaged and potent icon of our nation's commitment to freedom. This beautiful cracked artifact carries an inscription, and if any of you have been to Philadelphia to see this, I'll just remind you that the inscription says, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof." And yet when the bell was inscribed with that phrase in 1752, when it was merely the old state house bell of Pennsylvania, there were more than 150,000 enslaved people in the U.S. Proclaim liberty throughout the land. The bitter irony of the bell's inscription would only increase as the American colonies became dead set on independence. By the time the Second Continental Congress declared the United States a free and sovereign nation in 1776, the country held more than 460,000 enslaved people. There was perhaps no one who summarized these profound contractions better than Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist and statesman who was born into slavery. In the summer of 1852, he delivered one of his most famous lectures, the title of which, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July? What to the slave is the 4th of July? His speech delivered in Rochester, New York was many things. A challenge to the audience, a lament about the horror of human bondage, and a master of oratory. He called slavery the great sin and shame of America. Interestingly, in my reading about Douglass, I noted that he believed in dialogue and in making alliances across racial and ideological divides, something we could really use today. Dialogue across differences. Douglass was successful at rallying crowds and prompting moral revolutionary action. He himself was born in slavery, and like most enslaved people, didn't receive schooling. And yet he learned to read and write through observation and through sporadic tutoring that was provided to him by the wife of one of his owners. Ultimately, he was able to unleash a level of moral force through language that stands unique in history. A century and a half later, his words still carry a sort of power that can give us goosebumps and bring us to tears and urge us to action. I have to say, I urge you to read his speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. It's really an eloquent piece of work. Was Douglass's work art? Was it rhetoric? Or simply a call to justice? Well, I believe it was all of these things. In his speeches, autobiographies, and missives, he presented incontrovertible evidence of his humanity and sophistication, and by extension, exposed the horrors of slavery to indifferent, skeptical, and many times hostile audiences. I think we would all agree that slavery is an abomination. To make this case should require no artistic craft, and yet I think that if Douglass had not been such an effective student of language, the struggle for racial justice would have played out differently. His talent made the truth undeniable, and that in fact is the power of art. The case for art as a tool for social change and against racism in particular issues from a place of struggle as old as our nation, and that legacy stretches unbroken to this moment. In some cases, that means updating cherished parts of history to reflect how our values have changed. Many of you may know Mark Clegg, professor of musicology, and just announced this week to be our executive director of U of M's Arts Initiative. In his book, Oh Say Can You Hear, he chronicles the growing pains of our national anthem. The Star-Spangled Banner may be the most iconically American song, and for that reason, its meaning and the checkered legacy of its creator make it a complicated piece of art. Also, quintessentially American are the spirits of protest and reverence that have characterized its many famous renditions, from the screeching protest of Jimi Hendrix to the reverent performances on display at so many public events like Whitney Houston's production in the Super Bowl. The spirit of protest has animated art since ancient times, from graffiti mocking Julius Caesar to the wild strains of blues, jazz, poetry, and literature that were the expressive soul of the Harlem Renaissance and the Civil Rights Movement. Last year, our university's first arts-themed semester paid tribute to the history of art and activism with its theme of arts and resistance.
As we gather to reflect on the meaning of America's second Independence Day and the long road that led here, I hope we'll all make time for solemn reflection, but also for joy. When I see this year's excellent artwork by John Rodriguez highlighting Juneteenth, I'm reminded that joy is perhaps what art does best. And above all, this is a day to celebrate the joy of liberation. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's conversation, and someone who I have huge admiration for, Deborah Mitchell Covington. Dr. Covington is a transformative figure on our campus whose professional journey blends executive leadership coaching, higher education expertise, social work, and spiritual guidance. What an amazing combination of talents. She leverages her multifaceted experience to inspire and propel individuals, organizations, and communities toward achieving their diverse educational, business, spiritual, and life aspirations. As the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Equity Initiatives at the University of Michigan College of Engineering, Dr. Covington spearheads vital initiatives that nurture partnerships with minority-serving institutions, and we just participated in an event last week that COE sponsored, particularly by offering workshops aimed at reducing anti-Black racism and fostering bystander intervention. She's a co-creator of the Equity-Centered Student Services Framework for the Office of Student Affairs. Dr. Covington has been an instrumental force behind the African American Cultural and History Museum of Washtenaw County, where as board chair, she led the museum's transformation from a museum without a physical space to a fully functional entity with a permanent location. Kudos to you for that. Dr. Covington is a performance poet who has published 2 poetry books with companion sound recordings. She has a bachelor's degree in urban development from Michigan State University, a master's in social work from the University of Michigan, and advanced theological degrees, both a master's in practical theology and a doctorate in ministry from Ashland Theological Seminary. Wow. She also completed an executive leadership coaching program from Georgetown University's Transformational Leadership Program and is an associate certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. Dr. Covington's life work epitomizes a commitment to social progress, educational excellence, and the transformative power of faith, culture, and the arts. I am so pleased to introduce to you Dr. Deborah Mitchell Covington.
Well, I tell you, Provost McCauley and I have a mutual admiration club because she has been amazing here at the University of Michigan as Provost and as former Dean of the School of Dentistry, which is where we met. So thank you so much. I told her before we started that it was always my honor. I thought, oh my goodness, if I ever got to introduce Provost McCauley, I would really be, in the world, so to speak. But to sit here and have her introduce me, I almost passed out, I'm just telling you. Okay, so it is, and thank you for framing this day and this celebration and, helping us to think, reflect on the past, but also begin to think about where do we go from here. So I have the pleasure, and I'm super excited about introducing our closing keynote speaker, Damon Davis, who is an award-winning post-disciplinary artist based in St. Louis, Missouri. His work spans a spectrum of creative mediums to tell stories exploring how identity is informed by power and mythology. Davis is co-director of the critically acclaimed documentary Whose Streets, chronicling the 2014 Ferguson's uprisings. In 2020, critic Ben Davis cited his project, All Hands on Deck, which captured the hands of people who shaped and upheld the Ferguson movement as one of the 100 works of art that defined the decade. His work has been nominated for the Peabody Award, is featured in the permanent collection of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, and has been exhibited at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit, St. Louis Art Museum, Museum of Contemporary African Diasporian Art, and the San Diego Contemporary Museum of Art. Davis is a Firelight Media, Sundance Labs, TED, and Kennedy Center Citizen Artist Fellow. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to bring forth Damon Davis for a fireside chat. As he's coming, please buckle your seatbelts and get ready for this ride. You'll have two artists in conversation, and we'll see how that works out. Yeah.
Yep, we're here. Okay, good morning. Good morning. How are you doing, Damon?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I'm right on. I'm glad all y'all came. I thought school was out, so I didn't know how many people was gonna be here. Yeah. So I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate being asked to come.
Well, we are so fortunate to have you today in our Juneteenth celebration. And when I discovered your breadth of work, I was profoundly inspired, and it's an honor to finally get to sit down and have a chat with you. As I was reading about you and listening to your talks and videos and interviews, I was like, wait a minute, how old is this guy? You have done a lot in your short life, and I'm so excited to be able to witness what comes next. So we're just gonna start out with a few questions, but we want you to feel that this space is a space to flow. You know, as artists, that's what we do, right?
Yeah,
we flow. So feel free to riff off these questions and go wherever you feel like going today, okay?
Okay, let's do it.
So how has your family and growing up in East St. Louis influenced your artistic style and the themes you explore in your work?
I think with like me and everybody else, I don't think if you're being honest about the stuff you make, and I don't think where you come from wouldn't influence what you do. So for me personally, like you said, I'm from East St. Louis. I don't know if y'all know what that's at. I mean, y'all got a better idea than most people because you're from the Midwest, right? So the biggest people to come out of there is Miles Davis, another person with the last name that I got. He might be my uncle or something. I might do DNA test, see if that's what's up, you know? I told myself that when I was little, though. That was definitely a motivator. Josephine Baker, Catherine Dunham, Jackie Joyner Kersey, Flojo. So it's a few people that came from where I came from, but it's sparse. And I think the closest identifier a town or a city like where I come from here is like Flint, Michigan, right? It's a place like that, or like Gary, Indiana. Small, black, and not a lot of resources, to say it as kindly as possible. So I grew up in that, and it hit, like, I wouldn't do it any other way because I wouldn't have the grounding that I have. I wouldn't understand, I guess, basic hardworking people. And I guess that's my motivation. That's who I'm talking to. because that's who I am and the people that I come from. When you reading that bio, it's outrageous to me because I'm just like, I just keep working. It ain't real. I didn't have a plan for any of that. I just was prepared when things came my way, I guess, and I did what I thought was right. And then after a while, it just started to add up. It ain't really, that when I go talk to kids, the thing I tell them is that to be an artist just means you don't give up. Just the winners don't give up. Everybody was artists when I was little. Everybody had crayons and they was drawing, and year after year, it was less and less of them, right? And until it turned into you was getting made fun of because you was still doing it, and then until you wasn't getting made of because you was still doing it, right? But the thing is consistency. I think that has made me who I am, and not necessarily because I want to. It's just who I am. I don't know what else I would do without, even if whatever job I would be working, I would still be making stuff. So. And my parents, I came late. My sister called me the menopause baby because my mama was 42, My daddy was 42. And so they grew up in segregation. My daddy went to Nam. He came back, became a Black Panther. My mama grew up in Louisiana. And she left. You can guess why she would leave that environment, and she came to St. Louis to live with my auntie. And so my brothers and sisters, they daddy was a Black Panther, so she obviously had a type, you know what I'm saying? She obviously was hanging out in a certain group of people, and somewhere along the line I came along. So I had brothers and sisters that was much older than me, so I'm kind of like the oldest brother of my nieces and nephews. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm in a very strange place, time-wise. So I was raised around older people. They treated me like I was older. They didn't talk to me in baby talk or none of that. So I think that helped me to have much more, I don't know how to put it, guidance that my friends didn't have growing up, and a bigger worldview. And yeah, I just used it. And when I was younger, I thought of it as, I don't know how to put it, like a bad thing, that my parents was much older. And it wasn't fun having older parents. They going to sleep, you know what I'm saying, another reason why I'm an artist, I had to entertain myself. Cause they went to work, they was asleep. And so my brothers and sisters was the ones that did the fun parent things with me. And so it was just a very unique upbringing comparatively to the friends that I had. And I think that that's what shapes my worldview and my look at things. I feel much older than I am, I guess. And also, you was like, he's done so much. That's relative. Old is relative, because when I go talk to my nieces and nephews, I'm the old. You feel what I'm saying? So it ain't, it all depends on where you sit on the paradigm. But I think if I didn't have a family and the upbringing I did, I definitely wouldn't be making the work that I make. I might still be making stuff, but it wouldn't be geared towards the things that I think about. Yeah.
So it sounds like you had one of the things you said was that art is who you are. And so often in life, we don't realize who we are. And for you to realize that yourself as an artist at such a young age, it sounds like you had a cocoon of people around you that supported you and cheered you on to be who you are.
Theoretically. I don't think, like my daddy told me I wasn't gonna get no job in art. He was right. I made one. You know what I'm saying? I made one. It ain't really no jobs you could get. And I think because of what he was an artist, and for certain people of a certain age, before you could buy everything on the internet, even before malls, right? There was a Sears catalog that people ordered things from, right? And so my daddy won a contest as a kid, and he drew the cover. And so he was an artist, but he just couldn't do it. It wasn't, he was growing up in the 50s and 60s. That was not an option unless you was from Harlem or something like that, right? So he was he was bitter about it to a degree. So my brothers and sisters were more
support. I feel like there was no reference point for who I was in my family, right? So I was the first one to do a lot of stuff. My mom and daddy went to college, but they didn't go, like they had to go to the Army, stuff like that. I was the first one to go to college out of school to get a scholarship. And I was the only artist. To be in a black family, there were no musicians really, which is crazy to me, because everybody else, my friends, all of them, they had somebody that at least DJ'd. I was the only one doing music. So it was kind of like, I was the black sheep, for real. I was also the darkest one out of my brothers and sisters, so I was literally the black sheep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
like
That's
out of
real.
all us, you know what I'm saying? But I think, how can I put it? They loved me regardless. It wasn't like they didn't understand what was going on, but they was like, yeah, if you want to do it, shit, try it. You know what I'm saying? And so I just didn't give up. And they did teach me that, don't give up. All right. So I had a loving family, but not the art family. I am the artist in my family. So they supported me, but it wasn't as fanciful as if I wrote a movie about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It wouldn't be. It ain't as magical as it looks. They had jobs. They was hardworking people, and they was like, as long as you can pay your bills with it, then yeah, we with it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that was it.
That sounds great. It's so important. I hope that the artists in the room, the artists in the room that are kind of hidden, will be inspired by those words and just come out and be who you are. Because oftentimes artists are, we hide because we don't. You talk about courage.
Yeah.
You talk about courage.
Yeah.
And this is not one of our questions, but if you don't mind talking about the courage that it takes to be who you are as an artist and to take those next steps and to just be in the flow, because oftentimes artists have so much on their heart, so much they want to say, and it's hidden away. And so talk about it, what it takes as an artist to come out, show your work, and then make the statements that we need to hear today through your art.
Well, I think I will say, like, I knew that I was an artist. That's about all I knew. So I think that people think that when you hear that somebody knows themselves, I think that can be dangerous, because I don't think nobody know theyself. If they really being honest, or if you interesting at all, if you know yourself and you done figured it out at like 20, 25 or whatever, then that means you have stopped growing. And the people that peaked in high school are not winning, at least for me. The people that I know that peaked in high school, I do not want their life or to be them, right? And so I think that I'm constantly learning who I am. I know that I make things, and the making of things is how I'm learning who I am, right? So stuff that I made 5 years ago, stuff I made 5 to 10 minutes ago, that's who I was right then in that moment, right? So the next moment, I'm open to being a different person, and I think that's where the courage comes in, is because people are afraid of change, and change is the only constant thing in life, right? And so if you can figure that out, and if you can walk through the fear of things changing, your life changing, losing people, as you get older, your body changing, your mind changing, if you could just still do things, that's where the courage comes from. And I think because artists are some of the only visible people in life that are constantly exercising courage, because if I'm really for real and I'm saying exactly what I feel and I put it out there, you get to critique it, especially now, more than any time ever in history, that anybody can say anything about you and call you anything and take one moment of your life and make it into encapsulate who you are. And it's and that's not who anybody is, right? So I think the courage of just being able to put yourself out there is where the magic happens. And that's the real art. The process is the real art, not the final thing, but the walking through things and the learning that you get from it. I think that's what I enjoy. I rarely enjoy this part of it, like talking about the stuff. It was me making the stuff that I would have fun at. And sometimes it's like with film or music or whatever, like I said it when I made the thing, and then the people want me to come and tell you what I meant by it. But it's like, I would love for the audience to do some work. It's a conversation. I made it, so what do you see in it? You know what I mean? And that's where I'm asking the audience to exercise some courage. So tell me what you think. If you're too afraid to say what you think, then where are we at? I think people are afraid to say what they think now for different reasons than they used to. Most people don't want to look stupid, right? And the older I get, I know that everybody is stupid, for lack of a better word. Like, you know what I'm saying? Everybody don't know something. Everybody is not, like, I've never met somebody who knew everything about everything. And I think the older I get, I know that I don't know nothing. The stuff I thought was true is not. For every rule in the universe, there's an anomaly. Right? And for every stereotype, everybody you meet, that's why I stopped even doing that and thinking that all of the black people think like me, because I come from a specific place and a specific upbringing, and everybody don't have that. You know what I'm saying? And that goes across the board. So when I'm trying to make things, I'm just talking specifically from where I'm from, and I got a pad of courage to put that out. But I think that a lot of people are afraid to look stupid or to look evil now. To like for ignorance is now convoluted as evil. Just because you don't know something don't mean that you are the boogeyman, right? And so I think that we 10 years ago, like with Ferguson, I was really, stop this person from talking, stop these people from talking. And the older I get, I'm like, well, that's what white men been doing the whole time. I don't like you for this, so you don't get to come into this club. You don't get to be here. I don't like you because I don't like the way women make me feel when they start telling me the truth. So they not allowed in here. I don't like the way black people make me feel when they start telling the truth about their reality. And so sometimes we adopt because we ain't never seen freedom for real. So we adopt the tools of the people that look the freest when they not, right? So I think that for certain things we have to throw all of it out and rethink how power looks and how all of that looks. And that's what most of my work is about. It's dissecting power and the myths that we tell ourselves about it and how identity is formed by those things and how all three of those things interact with each other. Yeah.
Thank you. So your work spans various mediums, including visual art, music, and film, and you refer to yourself as a post-disciplinary artist. Will you share with us what that means and how you decide which medium to use for a particular project?
Okay. When I use the terminology post-disciplinary, and I'm again, I don't know everything. I'm glad I said that earlier. From the way I understand that term, it means that in my language, I'm trying to move past the idea that a medium defines my creative practice, right? The story defines my creative practice. The thing I'm trying to communicate or whoever I'm trying to talk to defines what I'm doing, right? So every story don't work well in every medium, right? There's a reason why a 3-minute song can tell you an entire lifetime of stuff and it leaves nuance for you to feel yourself in and all of that in a certain way that some stories fit well in that paradigm. Some stories need a 2-hour movie for you to truly understand and feel, and you need to see it and you need to, you know what I'm saying, you need to hear it. And the oldest, the oldest, I guess, phrase is pictures worth 1,000 words, right? So some things only need one image. And it leaves it, and that's exactly where it needs to be. So I believe that every medium is a tool in a toolbox. It is not a definitive way of thinking about art. And people that I look up to, are like Da Vinci, Gordon Parks, people that didn't never stop at one thing because the goal wasn't to be
the best painter or to be the best, filmmaker. It was to communicate yourself the best. It's just like knowing multiple languages. Like it's certain words that don't exist in English that exist in other languages. You know what I'm saying? Because to fully communicate with other human beings, and that's what I'm trying to do, is to communicate my thoughts the best way, the most eloquently, and it ain't always with words, it ain't always with images. It's about whatever I'm trying to say. So that's how I define post-disciplinary, and that's how I define my work, and that's how I try to move through it. When we thinking about what I want to talk about, I guess that's am I saying that right from the question, or the subject matter that I use?
How do you decide which medium to use based on the story that you want to tell?
Okay, so at this point in my life, I'm telling every story in every medium, and my studio is built like a gym, like arm day, leg day, like I got an area where I'm making beats. When I get tired of making beats, I let the beat play. I go over and I start drawing, or I start sculpting. And all of it is like, what do I want to say? I get caught up in a theme or a story or something that intrigues me, and it's based on the world around me or the world I can't see or the people that influence me. And then when I get stuck on one thing, then usually I start with music because it's operating in a different part of my brain, and I'm not thinking about words. I'm thinking about straight up emotions and feelings that I can tap into. And then so sculpture, I may move over to the sculpture area. But at this point, I come up with a story, and then I try them all out in every medium, right? And then it's much more science at this point, right? It's variables. It's changing the variable. It's changing different things around to figure out what effectively I can find that works to tell that specific story or to convey that specific message. And just like science, I guess the fuck ups or the things that you mess up on, for people that are children in here, I don't see many. I know y'all heard those words before. But the mistakes are the best part. The happy mistakes are where the real magic happens, right? So I'm also leaving myself open for things that I didn't think was gonna happen, right? And so I think that I'm approaching it from a place of curiosity. And I'm trying to make discoveries about myself and the world around me. So I'm not. So that's why I'm open to any medium being the right one. And it don't just stop with classical mediums. I'm interested in what technology can do to make me better at articulating things. Again, Da Vinci. If Da Vinci had an iPad, he would not be drawing in ink. I guarantee you. Whoever you look at as an innovator, they were pushing the line at whatever they had, the most high-tech stuff they had at the moment, and then that's why they have influenced other people. I'm not a purist about things. I'm not really afraid to go into the unknown, into the darkness, and walk around. I feel like that's what I'm doing the most of the time anyway. I'm feeling around in the dark until I find something that centers me and that I think that will communicate what I'm trying to think, what I'm thinking about to other people. I'm also not trying to outsmart the audience. I think that a lot of high art and fine art and all of that is just coded language for classism and to keep a certain group of people out of it. But the highest art that I think of is music, is film. Even down to religious texts and the stories that's told, like parables. These are things built to talk to a bunch of people from different places, and is meant for the street, for lack of a better word. You know what I'm saying? Like galleries are in themselves. Galleries and museums are built for people with time to sit and look at something, right? Like time to think through things and make up stuff in their head. And people with a lot of privilege, people like me, I done built mine, you know what I'm saying? But it's people that's born in it, that get to just sit around and look at white walls and blue squares and things of that nature. And it's not that it's not art, but it's a luxury to be able to sit and do that. So when I think of the work that I want it to communicate almost like street art, because that's for people that's at work, going to work. I'm on the bus. you know what I'm saying? So you got to communicate things super fast for those people, right? And so I'm trying to find a balance between the two. And it depends on the day and how I'm feeling. And then once I get the thing that I want to talk about, then I just run it through whatever the computer is in my head through all of the different art forms. But it's not I don't have a set protocol for what I'm going to talk about. It's kind of it's more mystic than that for me. You know?
And, I really, really love what you're talking about, because what I'm hearing is that you have an idea, you have a thought, and then you're in your studio or wherever, and then you just kind of go with the flow. And wherever, you have your starting point, which sounds like it's music, but then the spirit, and I don't mean that in a religious way, but the spirit that motivates artists, you just move through, and wherever that landing place is, wherever your spirit settles in with that medium is where you create from. Does that sound?
Wholeheartedly. And I'm not really afraid of I'm deeply agnostic, maybe even atheist to a degree. I ain't gonna lie to you, but I am deeply, deeply intrigued and fascinated with theology and religion, because it's the first science, right? It's the science of spirit. It's people putting things together with what they got around them to figure out what's going on. Before they understand anything, it's always been people trying to understand the world around them. And so in that regard, and when we think about what religion is at its basis, is routine and it's ritual, it's rigor, it's routine and ritual, doing things over and over again, right? And it's very religious when I'm thinking about my practice. That is my religion, right? So I don't, I'm not afraid, I don't steer away from that language. I just think that it is used to manipulate and hurt people a lot of times. So I'm just very careful about the way that I use it and the way that I talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad we captured this whole flow and how you move through your art. So as you know, we talked about this morning, I just spent quite a bit of time over the past couple of weeks studying you. And one of the quotes that I found on TikTok, so you have the whole social media thing locked down, so that's awesome.
They younger than me if they using that. You know what I'm saying?
So it says, you said, work like this is absolutely about creating new narratives and origin stories, both to correct the purposeful lack of representation, but also to outright ignore the Western narrative and create new ones. These new narratives expunge past dominant narratives about Blackness and create an altogether new definition for what Black is and can be. So your work consistently tackles social justice, race, and identity. How do you envision your art influencing the discourse around these issues?
First, if I said that, I was really jamming that day. You know what I'm saying? I was really, I rarely use the word expunge, so I was really in a place. But I think, so back to me, I'm ever changing. I think part of that is still true for me. I don't know if all of it is. Because if we deeply ignore and outright throw out Western culture, then it's, and not for their benefit, I mean if you throw out anybody's ideas, then you at a deficit, because even if you're thinking about it as a way of spiritual warfare, if you don't know what your enemy doing, then you already done lost, because they could use all kind of stuff on you. So I'm trying to be a student of everything that done happened, but I do think that we need to rewrite these old tropes and these old narratives. And so my work revolves around three basic themes, and it took me years to figure it out, but it's always been happening throughout my life. I'm talking about identity, I'm talking about mythology, and I'm talking about power, right? And I think it starts with mythology. And I think when people hear the word myth,
or mythology, they mean that to them that means it's not real, but it's very real. Like myths are super real because whatever you believe in, we talk back to in a religious context, faith. So whatever you have, if you like, the whole world has been shaped by faith, by people believing in things that they couldn't see. If our ancestors didn't have faith, we wouldn't be here, right? Because for the things that they had to go through day to day, they had to get up, knowing, like if we just going by the numbers, knowing that my life is going to end badly, that like I'm not finna get out of this situation, but I have faith that it's somewhere along the line, somebody, right, is gonna have a better time than me. So I'm gonna get up and do what I gotta do, right? And so when I think about that like they were building myths about the future for us before we got here, right? And so you have to have a story to believe in. And when you come out the womb, as soon as you come out, they putting myths and stories on you. Like they done told you what race you are, what gender you are, how much money you got, what neighborhood you finna live in for the rest of your life. And most people do not break out of those things. So most of life is either these things fit me and I'm okay with them and I really believe in them, or I'm trying to break out of them. That's what everybody doing all the time, right? The stories that we tell shape the entire world that we live in. Nations are not real. These lines were not here till white people showed up and started drawing them. So Michigan wasn't a thing. None of that was a thing, unless it like a lot of these places are named after Native Americans. So unless it was that group of people and that's what it was, then these things were the lines and the ownership of land. All of these are stories that we tell each other. Money itself, right, is a placeholder for value. It is not the value of the thing. So all of these are things that we tell ourselves, and it's a social contract that we all agree upon, and we all gonna say that this is real, and then we gonna walk around and say that it's okay. But the day we all say that these dollars don't mean nothing, who stops you? If everybody say that this ain't working for us, then it don't work, right? And it's happened over and over again in history. People see that this thing ain't working and we need to stop doing this, so we change it, right? And so those are myths. Those are living myths that we walking around in. The culmination of all of those myths create an identity. For each one of those myths that you fall into is who you are. You say that I'm this, I'm that. Like that's a story that you believe about yourself. And it is real if you believe it about yourself, right? So, and part of it is what you put on yourself, and the other half is what the world says you are, right? And that influences how you move, right? And then those myths and form that identity, and that identity says where you lay on the rungs of power, right? Because that identity will tell you how far you gonna go, who you are, all of that, right? So these things are inexplicably linked. They always gonna be linked, and they move fluidly in and out of each other. So what I have learned is my practice has been about understanding the relationship between those three things. Yeah.
That is amazing. I love the way that you reframe. I love the way that you kind of reframed mythology, and I mean, we could talk about your work in mythology all day long, because if y'all have not looked him up, please do, because I mean, he's so prolific that I would just have to just go to bed. It's like, this is just too much for me to process, because it's so relevant, it's so on point, and it's, I think anybody can find understanding and meaning in your work, no matter which. I mean, I was listening to your early raps about black men and what it means to be black men, and I was just thinking, okay, how do we make sure that these messages continue to be out there? So, I mean, we could talk about so many different things, but I want to focus right now on your film. Whose Streets received critical acclaim, and in the documentary, you and your co-director, Sabah Folian, thank you, give an account of the Ferguson uprising as told by the people who lived it. I just want to make a plug right here for those of us who are in DEI. Do not devalue lived experience experts, and make sure that as you're doing your work, you have lived experience experts contributing to whatever the outcome is. Otherwise, you're going to miss the goal that you've set forth. Okay, that was my 2-minute plug. When I watched the film, I immediately thought about the importance of representation and how different a narrative is when a face behind the lens of a camera is Black. So how did that experience shape you as an artist and an activist, and why was the perspective that you presented as a Black artist so relevant for that movement?
It is so crazy because it's 10 years this year, right? And so we be talking about getting old. Like I thought I was a kid, but then I was talking to, like, I meet kids that's 20 years old from Ferguson, from Florissant, and it's like, do you even remember what was going on then? So I think when I was mad, well, definitely, I'm from there. So Sabah ain't from St. Louis or East St. Louis. She ain't from that area. Nobody else on the crew is from that area except for one other dude, Chris Renteria. And my main thing for even agreeing or wanting to work with people from the outside was knowing that somebody from there had to tell a story, right? And somebody because I didn't meet people with no camera. I was just mad like everybody else, and I was out there, and I was going to jail with them, and I was protesting. I was using my art to help people out, and I think that a lot of the motivation and the reason for people to talk to us was that I was actually from it with them. And because we were watching people fly in and make their name and bounce out, right? And a lot of them people ain't never been back, right? And that's very frustrating to many people. And we ain't LA and we ain't New York, right? So it ain't the same level. And I mean, if y'all from around here, y'all can relate. You know, people come in and we the flyover, right? We ain't important unless it's on fire, right? And so it was very important for me to make sure that somebody from there got to tell our side of the story. Because it's a bunch of sides to every story. And we already knew what the media side and the military-industrial complex and the government, they side was. It's always the same side. It's always the same conversation. It's always the same narrative. We watching it happen overseas in the Middle East. We watching it happen in Palestine. We watching it happen in the Congo and Sudan, right? The people with the most power and the most resources get to tell a story about how they want it to look, right? And it ain't till it's safe and basically, for lack of a better word, they didn't won the war. Then they want to make holidays for us. then they want to put up monuments to absolve themselves of the evil that they do, right? And so I want to make sure before we even get to that part, right, that somebody told a story this way. Because the farther away you get from an event, your memories are not they not true. Right? They just as mythical as anything else, right? The memories are clouded by emotions and all of that. So I want to get it down right now, right? Let's get it down right now. Let's tell it right now how we feel right now. And Sabah was with it, and the rest of the crew was with it. At least that was my portion. Like I did not do it by myself, right? And so when now looking back, sometimes I don't know how to feel about it. I don't like watching that movie. It does not make me feel good. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it is not a fun thing for me. But if I had the chance, I would do it again.
Awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and I hope that it's back to those kids that are like now they 20. You know what I'm saying? I was making it for them because I knew at some point everybody was gonna be gone.
Yes.
That knew the story. Right? So if you don't write it down for yourself. Mm-hmm. Then you leaving it up to the oppressor to tell your story, and they always gonna lighten the blows. They always gonna make themselves look. It's just like Juneteenth. It's like when you hear it in school. It's like one day white people just woke up and knew that it was bad to have people in slavery, right? That it wasn't nobody fighting with the same weapons that they had. You know, they don't teach about John Brown and people like that. Right?
Right.
So you have to have somebody writing down
Yes.
the alternate histories so that you know that power never succeeds without violence, quite frankly.
Yes,
They don't give it up willingly, right?
Right.
Or not violence, but just like, not the violence that they using, but if you don't push back, people don't just wake up and be like, I'm gonna stop stepping on you.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not how it works. So you have to show people having resistance in situations for the next generation to know how to deal with things later on. And even if you didn't do it right, when I look back, it's a whole lot of stuff that we didn't know, that we wasn't listening to elders on, that we don't, you know what I'm saying? When you young, you
got it out
you
there.
think that you the first one to discover racism.
Right.
And all of that. And you know, like nobody ever tried to walk down the street or protest before. You know what I'm saying? But again, I grew up with like my daddy and them was already on that, so I had a different, I had a little bit more perspective, not much, but a little bit more perspective than some people. And so it was a playbook. It was meant to be a playbook in real time because we knew that we was at the start of something that now it will be remembered as Black Lives Matter movement. But we was at the start of that. In my opinion, or from where I stand, because again, I'm biased because I'm from there. That's where actual pushback happens for this generation. That's where it starts, where white people are actually afraid. Now, no, I'm not talking like when things start getting burnt down and things start like that's when they actually all right, let's talk.
Right.
Let's sit down and talk. Before when it's just like T-shirts and all of that, that doesn't get us to the table to even have a conversation.
Right.
They have to feel that they're either losing power or something like that to even sit down and have a conversation with you. And I think that's when it really got real, for real. You know what I'm saying? Like Trayvon and that's where it starts to arc up. But once, like, St. Louis did something that I ain't never seen nobody do, like burn down a gas station. You know, like outrageous.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's when the whole world was like, you know what, maybe we should take a look at these numbers and all of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's a catapult for us to start to redefine black men just being predators, you know, and never being victims, just victimizing everybody,
right.
And so, I think that, and men, not kids, like Mike Brown he was a kid,
Right.
but he was big, right? He would be considered a grown man. That's what I teach my nephews. Once your voice start changing, once your voice deep, you a man. They don't care. They not looking at you like you a kid. They not, and so I think that's when we start saying the person that's very hard to empathize with is finally getting the empathy, right?
Yes.
And so I thought, and me and the whole crew, I think we was just trying to capture that moment so it could be a playbook in real time for people to organize around.
And you know, when you talk about empathy, seeing what happened in Ferguson from the lens from a black face behind the lens, it really told the different story compared to, and I love the way you all juxtapose what the media was saying versus what the lived experience was. Yeah. And I also hear in what you're talking about, which is so powerful, is the call and the cry to artists to record history in whatever way you do it, whatever medium you use, it has to be recorded. And with the threat of burning books and banning books and so forth, it's important for us to use the spoken word and go back to being griots in our communities. So I just really appreciate you bringing that thread forth.
And one thing I want to say before you brought back, and I meant to just say now, but it's like being behind the camera and just a shared experience, right? And back to everybody is not the same. And if we subscribe to the idea that all of black people are the same, then we just reinforce the racist ideas that these white people had in the first place. You know what I'm saying? But I think that just knowing when not to ask a question, because you can physically feel how painful it is for somebody.
Right.
If you ain't never been in a position, then you would just keep running your mouth. I done watch white interviewers do it all the time. You don't know when to stop, and you don't know when to. And I think just a shared experience and empathy that sometimes only comes from living a certain way changes the entire lens of a film, and that's why I strongly urge people to, because I don't think that you can't capture it, because at the core of it, we are human beings. But I think there's a lack of empathy, and even in the idea of what journalism is, reinforces what I guess Western imperialism, colonialism, and capitalism. The idea to remove your emotions from things makes you a stronger person, and I think that is a bad idea. And I think that's what got us here in the first place. If we cannot have shared emotion and shared understanding around things, then we don't ever get to be full human beings. And I think that when you come from a certain thing, then you can you can ingest that into the work. And I wanted to say that before, but I forgot. And
That's okay. I'm glad you brought it through, because, we talk about now emotional intelligence and how critical that is for success, for leadership, for communicating with people, for bringing people together. So I really appreciate you bringing up, the need to open up our emotions and feel for and with people. So that's very powerful. We are is it time to do some questions? Okay. This has been an absolute joy,
Appreciate it.
So now we get to your favorite part, when you could have a little talk back with the audience.
Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not. Let's see what we get.
Right up front. Oh, would you stand and say your name, please?
Just so everybody can hear you.
Thank you so much. I'm Pamela, and I'm from Detroit, and I come down. This is my second Juneteenth, and I am just so amazed at you, young man, and your wisdom. And I like the fact that you shared about sitting with the elders. That's what we call it.
Yes,
when
ma'am.
you were a kid. I too was the same way, sitting with the elders. So I was always far more aware of things, far more advanced than my siblings.
Yeah.
So I think that helped, and I enjoyed that. Here's my part to the arts that I enjoy. What are the soundtracks? What are you listening to right now? I'm not a musician, but I love music from all genres. What's that one song that's really kind of driving you right now in your work?
I mean, to be honest, Not Like Us is what's driving me today. That's what I'm driving around in. I mean, I don't think nobody ain't on that. I'm a Kendrick Lamar fan, honestly.
That right there.
Yeah. So I like what that song already was, because I do like it's very toxic. I will say that, but I love it. I love it. I love rap. I am a practitioner and a follower of it, and I like the battle or the competition of it, because what rap comes out of, a lot of people forget that hip hop comes out of stopping gangs from like finding something else to do other than fighting. So the competition part, it can't be removed from it, because in the Bronx, that's what the hip hop comes from gang treaties. So if we not gonna shoot it out or box it out, then we gonna out rap each other, we gonna out dance each other, we gonna outdraw each other. So I really enjoy that. But after seeing that concert, at least clips from it, to see the unity that he was able to bring among, I guess, street tribes, for the lack of a better word, like the gangs and stuff like that, to see them come together for something in peace and just having fun. So that's what I've been bumping. I've been going back to a lot of jazz lately, because I inherited all my father's records. So I've been listening to a lot of that. I've been listening to a lot of Cannonball Adderley, the Coltrane's, both of them. I think Alice Coltrane, I like Alice more than John in many regards. I would say that's controversial. Yeah. But I like her work. I like that she was able to blend multiple cultures by the end of her life. She done blended multiple cultural references and music together seamlessly and honestly, because she was actually a follower of a lot of that. But back to the religiousness of what the way they treated they treated their work as religion. You know what I'm saying? And just
as a practitioner of art, I really admire it, and I'm studying how they were able to find work-life balance in that, you know? So yeah, that's what I've been listening to. Thank you for that question. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions up here?
Thank you. My name is Tala, and my question is, as we know, art has a way of cutting through. You know, it just takes like hearing a song, seeing a picture, hearing a poem to cut straight to the heartstrings without people having to intellectualize everything. And you talked about empathy today. When you're making art, are you thinking about connecting with someone who's maybe not sympathetic to, you know, the truth that you're trying to reveal? Or are you just strictly about making connections with those that are kind of on your side of things? Or do you believe in the power of art to bring people together from very polar opposite sides, basically?
Okay. Today, let's say today, I firmly said that I don't make stuff for white folks no more. Anybody that ain't like me, I make stuff to fortify the people that need it, instead of trying to garner empathy from people that ain't never gonna have it for me, right? So, to a degree, I believe that. But the last part that you said complicates my answer, right? Because I do believe that art can bring people together. I just gave you an example of people that's been at war with each other since the 70s, right? Yeah, but they can come together around art and have fun. So I know that happens. When one of the biggest things to get rid of segregation was like Chuck Berry and like music, that they couldn't stop the kids from dancing together because they didn't care. They like you can't have a velvet rope between the dance. Eventually people gonna break it up and do it. So I know that art brings people together. But I think that there are different uses, and that like artists need to be very aware of what they're doing. And so that's why I don't take it lightly, and I don't think it's just a joke. And I think that, again, it is something almost religious. It's like being a monk. You're a practitioner of something that's been handed down throughout the centuries. That's a very important thing, right? So I think that in much of my work, I am making things for people that come from the places that I come from, because I can't speak to other realities that I ain't never been in. I can empathize. I can empathize, but I cannot speak to it wholeheartedly unless it's something deeply human. Like, everybody gets sad. Everybody want to be happy. Everybody want their family safe. Everybody falls in love. Those things I can speak to, but I can only speak to it from the way it's happened to me. And I think the more micro I can be, and more truthful and more detailed about my experience and my cultural experience, actually it works. That's what makes people from other places relate to you, because the more honest you are, then they can see themselves in it anyway. So I think a lot of times I used to really be thinking about other people, and I think it's stupid or I think it's just a lie that artists say, I'm just doing this for myself. That's you would keep it to yourself. You know, I know they lying, right? They would just keep it to themselves. So there is something, an honesty that has to be brought forth to say that we are talking to other people. But I think the more you concentrate on just telling, do you believe it? Do I believe what I'm saying, right? Would I listen to this or whatever? I think that I'm moving more and more into that, and I think that I'm talking to people with like minds. Because if I also believe that all of these people that ain't like me are the same, then I'm only reinforcing the myths and the stories that we've been telling each other for a long time. So I think that the more and more I can at least be true about at least where I'm at right then I think that it will reach people regardless. That don't mean I'm worried about them. I think that's the best way to say it. I don't think I'm going out like I need to get something to save the whole world, because that is impossible. And the more and more you're trying to be universal, the less it means. The less it means. You just pulling stuff that, you know, it's much more corporate then. It's much more like I'm selling a product. And I think that I'm trying to stay away from that. So I'm just trying to be honest with what I'm doing. And hopefully people get it.
Thank you so much, Damon. This has been an amazing, what an hour that we've spent together. And I I don't know, I want to do something artistically with you
Come on,
because
yeah,
you are
let's
just so
move.
motivating.
Yeah.
And I just hope that other artists in the room, other people in the room, use whatever gifts or talents they have to change the narratives, to share your personal experiences, and be as honest and raw and courageous and humble as someone like you are, Damon, because it takes, for us to really, really make a change, it's going to take a lot of courage.
Oh yeah. It don't do it without that. Also, I want to say we talk about art as though it's just pictures and movies and drawing. If you cook, if you care about kids and you're a really good mama or daddy or whatever, there is art in everything. And I think we need to stop designating it, again, the galleries and things of that nature. It's much bigger than that. It's how you live your life. Yeah, so live your life in a way that you believe in. And I think then you're an artist.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you that we should, really kind of unleash the artist in us,
Like
no
that.
matter what it is,
I
because my mother was an artist over those
I
greens
hear
and
that.
sweet potato pies and come
too.
on now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you. Give it up for Damon. I got to give you a standing ovation myself.
Yeah, thank you.